Today we have a very esteemed panel, as we always do. General Sudhakar Jee needs no new introduction to our viewers. He has been with us on several discussions, on several sessions. We have a new guest today, Major General Shahidul Haque, retired from the Bangladesh Army. General Haque introduction is it's very colorful, it's very varied, so I'll come to that. I'll like to do justice to that. Before that, let us bring viewers up to date with what are they going to discuss today. Our discussion would be covering the military aspects of the Ukraine war, which is underway for the last 1 year now. The Ukraine-Russia war, by whatever name you call it, special operations or whatever. We have had generals from the West, we have had strategists from the West, from North America, from Europe, from the Western Hemisphere. They have been discussing this issue. Military strategists who know their operational art, and once I introduce General Haque, you will also see he also knows his diplomatic science and art. How they see the military aspects of this war unfolding from day one, from February last year, how it all came together and fell apart, and where we stand now, and what is expected in the future. The impact is there for the entire world. So what do we expect militarily from this conflict in the future? I think the outcome will largely depend on that. The outcome to this entire conflict will largely be, an outcome of the military conflict. Coming back to General Haque's introduction, he has commanded multiple armored units in Bangladesh. He has also raised an armored unit. So he's an armored officer where General Sudhakar is infantry officer. So we are bringing you today jointmanship. Today we are bringing you a proper group of forces, from the infantry, from the armor, so who can give you a holistic view of what's happening on the plains of Ukraine. Because anyone who has followed military history will know that the plains of Ukraine has hosted, iconic wars from Napoleonic times to World War I to World War II. So I wouldn't like to take much more time. General Haque's introduction we have given. He was, after his military stint in the Bangladesh Army, he served as a diplomat in multiple countries, including Libya. He was an ambassador, Bangladesh ambassador to Libya. He was a military attaché to Myanmar. So you can understand the kind of rich experience and perspective he will bring to our discussion today, and he will complement General Sudhakar's expertise and knowledge, which has been evident to our viewers in the past. So over to you, gentlemen. So, General Sudhakar Jee, as always, if you would like to begin on this subject, please.
Good evening, Sandeep, and very warm good evening to General Haque from our neighborhood. It's a great pleasure, sir, to interact with you by virtual means, and wish you a very, very satisfying and engaging interaction. Fruitful interaction on the subject. And having said that, going to the topic which Sandeep has unfolded, I would say that every big thing starts with a small thing, in simplistic expression. If there is a big thing taking place in Ukraine and Russia, between Ukraine and Russia, in Ukraine itself, there are smaller things which either they have been overlooked or ignored by either of the parties, because of which the trust deficit has actually mounted by the day, and which has actually led to this particular situation. But before we go to the situation, military per se, let me, if you allow me, very briefly, I would like to give a geographic and historic perspective so that our viewers get a better understanding. Firstly, geography. What is Ukraine and where is Ukraine? Very briefly, Ukraine used to be a central province or a piece of ground or a state even during Soviet era. USSR. It was so central, be it in terms of industries, be it in terms of, it is to be called as the granary, the rice basket, and be it in terms of the minerals, the metals, the oil, gas, coal, everything. So that is to be central during Soviet era. And after Soviet Union disintegrated in the year 1991, it continued. The understanding is that I am not going too much back in history, because then we'll come across a milestone or spectrum of milestones which will lead us to controversies. I'm just coming on to the important aspect. So that legacy of being central to Soviet Union was understood to have continued even after the disintegration of Soviet Union during the tenure of past 30 years of Russia. Having said this, the geography, Ukraine is located in such an area that after 1991, the USSR broke up into 15 provinces or 15 nation states, and Ukraine happened to be one of them. So Ukraine is actually located with a border with Europe, that is Poland, Romania, and Belarus is to the north, and to the south is the Black Sea and Sea of Azov. And Moldova is to the southwest border of Ukraine. And Ukraine, this, if you say the east-west extension of the border of Ukraine is approximately 1100 to 1200 kilometers. And north-south extension of the eastern border with Russia is approximately 550 to 600 kilometers. This is important to understand for better assimilation by the viewers. Now, there is a river which generally, roughly, it flows somewhere in the center of Ukraine, dividing Ukraine into almost two halves, a western half and the eastern half. The western half has got Catholic majority people who are pro-Europe or pro-Western. Their belief, their way of life, their livelihood is almost, they actually their leaning is to the European countries, whereas the portion which is to the east of Dnieper River, they are majority at one point in time. There used to be Russian-speaking people. They are not Catholic. Catholics are to the western side. These are all Baptist and Orthodox Russian Christian system, and Russian speaking people, and they have their way of life and everything. The connection is with Moscow or Russia. So having said this, the historical perspective is that some time back, Ukraine had been presented, the Crimea had been presented to Ukraine, offered to Ukraine by some important personality in 1917. And that has continued to remain with Ukraine. More will come as we get going ahead with the discussion. Yeah. Last but not the least, at some point in time, Ukraine had a large arsenal of nuclear weapons during Soviet era. After the 1994 agreement, which was signed between the important stakeholders, namely Russia, France, Germany, UK, I suppose, these weapon systems were given back to Russia after the disintegration. And there was an undertaking by this particular summit that the security of Ukraine will be provided when time comes, the requirement arises, by all the stakeholders, particularly Russia. So why am I highlighting is that there are contradictions which are manifesting now. The same Russia which had made a commitment to protect Ukraine, based on which the nuclear weapons had been actually, handed over to Russia, has invaded. Now, why has it invaded? It has invaded because, you see, Westerners will have their perspective, but we in the subcontinent, we take a very neutral perspective. In the year 1949, this organization called as NATO came into being. When NATO came into being, there were a total of 12 nation states as members, including US and Canada. And
Sir, I would just like to come in a little bit here. I'm sorry. So I am saying this background is available to readers through various perspectives, about NATO and the political part. What is unique in what you are saying, sir, the very neutral helicopter view which you are taking, which is actually benefiting the viewers, is the military aspect. As of February last year, if we start from the time Putin started the special operations, how did it develop militarily? So viewers would like to know the military balance of strength in February, just before it started. NATO on one side, like you brought up NATO, which is very relevant here. The role NATO plays here, not being directly involved, but the enabling role NATO plays. What was Ukraine's armory like? What were the military preparations were like vis-a-vis Russia, and then what happened?
Excellent. Okay. I was coming to this point only, but giving this preamble was important for
Yes,
better
sir.
understanding.
Of course,
And very
of course.
quickly, NATO started with 12 nation states way back in 1949. By the time the disintegration of USSR took place, the numbers had gone up to 16 in the year 1991. And it kept on building up. By 2020, there are a total of 30 members. Why am I highlighting this point is because this is the central factor which has led to the military confrontation between the two stakeholders. Why? In the year 1989, when the Berlin Wall collapsed, James Baker, the Secretary of US, had paid a visit and met Mikhail Gorbachev sometime in February or March of 1990, and he had given an assurance that not an inch of expansion will take place from where it is today, that is the eastern border of the Europe. So after having given the assurance, the NATO kept on expanding from 12 to 30 members as on today. Now, as per the understanding also, the Warsaw Pact had a couple of countries in the Eastern Europe. Warsaw, they dissolved themselves and it became non-existent. But a point came wherein the security of Russia was threatened as close as to in the borders of Ukraine, Lithuania, these are called the Baltic states, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. They also came under the umbrella of NATO. So as many other countries, Poland and all, they started deploying the missiles in Poland. They started militarizing the complete Black Sea. UK started developing the ports. So when such things happened, in the year 2008, George Bush had given a direct call that Georgia would be becoming a member, so as Ukraine, and to which Putin had actually warned, okay, please, not Ukraine is a red line. Now, similarly, in the 2014 democratically elected president, who was pro-Russian, elected in 2010, he was removed by a form of a kind of a social unrest, Yakunovich, and he was replaced by somebody who was pro-European. Thereafter, one major incident took place that the constitution underwent change. The Russian language, which is to be forming an integral part of the constitution, they said, no, the Russian language will not be the national language. Ukrainian language will be the language. So these kind of things went in, because of which the Russia started feeling the pressure of NATO expanding and being a threat to its security. So on 24th February, after much of consultation, warning, direct communication, and also request and many agreements. Minsk Accord also was signed in 2014 and 15, based on which the violent activities were supposed to have stopped. Thereafter, a hybrid warfare started off in 2014, and in the meantime, Russia was trying to bring in some kind of sense and wisdom into the minds of the people, but it didn't work out. On 24th February 2022, finally he announced a conventional war. When the war broke out, that time, despite the larger strength, Russia's armed forces is almost 6 times more. It is 4 to 5 times rather, 4 to 5 times much larger than that of Ukrainian forces, be it infantry, armor, your aircraft, or anything for that matter. Now, Russia started mobilizing. They had around 9 lakh of people, soldiers. Out of 9 lakh, they had mobilized just about, I think, 1,50,000 to start with. So it was a kind of a special operation which Russia had ordered. And contrary to the 1,50,000, or as against 1,50,000, Ukraine had mobilize the entire force. It was at its disposal. It was around 250,000. So while Russia was the attacker and Ukraine was supposed to be the defender, this is where the first contradiction or challenge comes to the military teaching. An attacker is supposed to have a minimum ratio of 1:3 or 3:1, sorry. Therefore, to start an offensive, call it by any name, special operation or anything, since Russia was in the offensive, it started with a limited force, means limited objective, and it was a limited war to large an extent. Whereas Ukraine started with a bang, with a full throttle, with whatever might it had, mercenaries or whatever people they had, they all brought together, and thereafter they kept on registering and put a halt to the movement, offensive actions of the Russia towards Kiev and Kharkiv.
Sir, over here, I would like to, sorry, I would like to bring in certain details here about the early days, when you said that Russia attacked towards Kiev and Kharkiv and what happened before that. I would want General Haque, as an armored man and as a military strategist in his own right, to tell us about the merits and demerits of Russia's basic operational and geostrategic doctrine, which they used in the early days, sir. Let's start with that before we come to the tactical details on the field.
Right. Thank you very much. First of all, whatever we read in the Western press and television, on ground is not the same. Number one. Number two, I'll not discredit Russian military that they have done. They have blown up so many things. Tanks were blown up, this, that. I'll never say that one. Because there are certain statistics I like to highlight. Like within 10 to 15 days of the war, which started in February last year, Russia could capture an area larger than Britain within 10 to 15 days. So this is a big achievement. Yes, I'll come later on what happened actually. Then number one. Number two, mind it, they have used only 12, as General Sudhakar was saying, they have used only 12 to 15% of their soldiers. They're the frontline soldiers, the guard battalion, guard brigades, and also the actual Russian military army, which we are saying. Rest of the things are only, at times it went up to 20%, but not beyond that one. Then also there is a very interesting statistics that they used only 4% of their artillery. 4-2 at one time they used 7%. Then at times they used only 5 to 8% of their missiles. They've used only less than 10% of their tanks. What I'm trying to say is that Russians have actually gone for a special operation. They haven't mobilized their whole military. Neither they have actually gone for, the way it was supposed to be done, declared war and all-out war. They haven't done till end of March. Yes, this is the one important. And Mr. Mukherjee, if you remember, the same just on the north of Kiev, that in that river in Second World War also, at that time opponents were different. At that time, Soviets were who beaten up German in that river. Now it is the Russians who are beaten by the Ukrainian in that same river. They could not enter Kiev. This is one of the major, I must say, a benchmark in the whole operation, special operation by Russia, that Russia actually, one of the major drawbacks which I found, that there is a serious lack of intelligence, because the way the coordinated attack launched or counteroffensive launched by Ukrainian, I'll say that very impressive. It's actually really impressive. They not only halted their Russian advance, but they've also demolished. There's a pre-prepared demolition, which they have actually hindered the mobility of the Russian army. So this is what they wanted at that time. That Russia wanted a quick, investment of the capital, and forcing Zelensky for going for a negotiation of those 2 points, denazification and not joining NATO. But the violent counter-offensive launched by Ukrainian, that had actually changed the whole gamut of war till, in the month of March and beginning of April. Now, what happened now? One of the reason is that Russia, Russia, they use like in South Asia, we use, or British, they use battle group or combat command tactics. They also use the same thing. They call it battalion tactical group. This battalion tactical group, they have, in Americans, they call it 95 battalion tactical BTGs are in Ukraine, but some independent sources, they say 78 BTGs are in there. But these BTGs are not concentrated in all around all around Ukraine. So these are in limited areas. What happened suddenly when Mr. Putin decided that he's going to, since his first phase failed, rather his initial mission failed, he modified his mission, that he will go for the south. And another feat, I must say, that when Jan Sudhakar will bear me out, that shifting of forces from one axis to another axis, that to armored, it's a really, really great feat of generalship and also the military. Can you imagine, from the north, they have shifted their forces to the south. This is also big, yes. Now, let's come to the what happened. From the moment they have started shifting their forces, Russians, actually, they have lost the momentum. And this is where Ukrainians have launched counteroffensive, and from the Kharkiv to Izum and all the way towards south, they have counteroffensive. They have regained a lot of places. But at one time in the middle of last year, when Russian army thought that there are certain in the river, Dnieper river line, which was actually very strategically important, and Russians, they could not bring their bridge layers forward to cross the rivers. That is also another benchmark which has actually forced Russian military to satisfy in taking up defense along the river. So what happened? What we are seeing at this moment for the last 3 to 4 months, the stalemate, which is what it was broken last week by Suledar. I think pronunciation is Suledar. From there, actually, the little bit, front line has shifted. Otherwise, for the last 6 months, it is the same where it was. Now, what happened actually? One of the things, as I was saying, that Russians, they always use their tactics, speed and momentum. They used it. But the battle group, these BTGs, have got two very important aspects, which actually played a very important role. At the same time, it has also had a disadvantage. Like, BTGs are very excellent when it is a rolling country, when it doesn't have any, obstruction, or there is an open country, then it's excellent. That's what they did. They knocked the doors of Kiev. But the moment they have tried to enter the cities and other places, there what is the whole trouble started. And if you remember the famous ambush by Ukrainian, where they disseminated one of the BTG, destroying their tanks and APCs, whatnot. So what the lesson learned was that BTGs is very good for momentum, and it has got very, very high concentration of fire, high mobility, but it has got a serious lack of infantry. This lesson, in South Asia, we are trying to learn that yes, infantry, you should not go to such constricted places without your support of infantry. And BTGs are really seriously lacking infantry when it comes to fighting in a constricted or in a limited area. Now, this BTG, now what happens at this moment when we are talking, most of the fightings are done not by Russian army. It is done by the militias of Donetsk.
General Haque,
yes.
Before we get into this very different aspect, when we start talking of Wagner, etc. Before coming to this part, for the advantage of our viewers, our lay viewers, I'll just try to, from the military historians and map tacticians point of view, I just like to sum up for them what actually happened. Then they'll be able to understand your discourse a little better. See, when initially Russia came in, as General Haque was talking of the BTG doctrine, of sending in fast-moving formations, combined arms formations. And General Sudhakar Jee had complimented that by saying that, those figures were ominous, that they were very, very sparse on the ground. The numbers were, in terms of overall war-making capability of the Russian army, they were very few. And like General Sudhakar Jee had said, instead of a 3:1 superiority in numbers, they had come with a deficiency in ratio vis-a-vis the Ukrainian armed forces. So was it only mobility? So let's understand, when the Russian combat group came from near the Belarusian border towards Kiev, it was a 40-mile long road convoy of multiple BTGs. It was preceded by a special forces, airborne forces operations in that airport, just to the west of Kiev, grabbing that airport and holding it as, to facilitate supplies and replenishment for the formations which are coming from the the combined arms formations coming from the west. If you remember, gentlemen, this was towards late February. And then came March, with the first week of March, the notorious Rasputitsa, the mud season, which comes twice to the Russian and Ukrainian plains, when the snow melts and it's a sea of mud. The countryside is a sea of mud, and off-road capabilities are severely reduced. So if you're bringing in a huge armored and motorized formations, and they don't have off-road capability, and if you have an enemy like Ukraine, which had access to the entire Western arsenal of precision-guided missiles, and with the Turkish Bayraktars, which they used to devastating impact in the early days. Bayraktars later on, because they fly very low, so they become very susceptible to interception from air. But in the initial days, no one knew what's happening. That battle group was fought to a standstill. That was a brilliant defensive coup on the part of the Ukrainians. A is containing the Russian special forces. B, stopping their battle group. Obviously the Ukrainians had no obligation to make it easy for the Russians. So off-road capability, if the Russians had chosen that time, late February, is their problem. And number three is Putin had wanted to neutralize the Ukrainian top leadership. He had talked of a regime change. He could not do that. His special forces, special forces, should we say, the Chechens, etc., who we are told had gone for the top leadership, they couldn't do it. The top leadership was whisked out of Kyiv. They went to Western Ukraine and put under the close supervision of the Nazi militia, Azov, and other far-right radical people whose loyalty is, completely non-negotiable, and whose fanaticism is like the Waffen-SS of the old. So Putin was safe there. Now, why I wanted to bring this part is there was an issue with Russian timing and military doctrine. That same part of the country, if we go back so many years to World War II, in February 43, the Germans had come out with a counter-offensive after the Stalingrad debacle at Kharkiv. And the same season, same ground. And the SS Panzer Corps, SS Panzer Corps had gone in, of course, with there was 4th Army, 4th Panzer Army backing up, but it was essentially the 3 SS divisions, Leibstandarte, Das Reich, and Totenkopf. They had been able to take Kharkiv. They had been able to destroy huge Russian forces. But after that, what? Once they tried to move towards Belgorod, the terrain came in the way. Terrain friction cannot be wished away. And it couldn't be wished away this time. Same part. I don't know why people miss that lesson. They tried to do the same thing. I mean, others tried to do Russia tried to do the same thing, which had gone to their advantage all those years back, 70 years back, So, gentlemen, what I am saying is, when we look at Russian doctrine, this enormous setback, they wanted a quick war. You cannot come and walk into someone's country with so few people and fight a protracted war. General Sudhakar Jee, what went wrong after that? After the initial setback, what happened after that?
Sandeep, very quick reflections from my side about what the general has covered and what you have actually given out. That is where the start point was. It is not out in the media with clarity. My research has indicated a couple of issues which you have alluded to now. The first and foremost thing, the main objective of Russia to start with this special mission conflict was to neutralize the leadership in Ukraine. And this task had been given to special forces, call it by any name, Chechen group or whatever special force. And that is why they are calling it as a special mission. Basically, their unstated or undisclosed objective, in my research, it has come out loud and clearly, was to carry out the regime change. That was the singular objective.
Yes.
This singular objective, as per their thought process and initial plan, was supposed to have been accomplished within 7, maximum 10 days. That is why the special forces landed, like you rightly said, west of Kiev, and there was a huge, convoy lined up one behind other. But when the special elements went closer to the place where Zelensky was living, they actually came in contact with his special forces, Zelensky's special forces, and there was it was hand-to-hand fight. So it didn't come out in the media. But the issue got highlighted that yes, they were actually gunning for him. So that's how you rightly said he went out. Okay, one part. Second part I wish to highlight is what happened thereafter. You see, instead of 7 days or 10 days of conflict, they defied all the military lessons that we have learned over the years since Napoleon time or Hitler's time. The Kiev took almost 26 to 36 days for capture. That time Kiev was smaller in size. Kharkiv was a small township. So, and the terrain that you have brought out is a very significant aspect that they never were prepared for these kind of things. Russia, to start with, always thought that the operation would be over within 10 days. This is what the highlight of my research. Third and most important point is, whenever you go in for any offensive, Air Force is a predominant and strategic resource. Air Force should have been gainfully, maybe selectively, should have been gainfully and optimally utilized. But to my horror, somehow Air Force did not come into effective employment by Russia as also by Ukraine. Third point, which is standing out very clearly, is that the air defense, the general will bear me out, Russia as in today has got one of the state-of-the-art air defense missile system, that is your S-400. S-400 is by far, it is far better than Patriot. Far better. Ukraine has got S-300. But I was shocked to see in my research, it has come out. In fact, S-400 also has been penetrated. At a place called Enigel or something, they have gone and hit the strategic bomber, and with the help of these Turkish the Bayraktar drones.
Bayraktar, yeah.
Bayraktar drones, and these drone attacks 700 kilometers from the mainland of Ukraine. They have penetrated into Russia. So S-400, which are onto the flanks of this particular base, military base, onto the east and onto the west, they managed to penetrate by flying low, nap of the earth, flying by the drones. This is incredible, unbelievable to a military man who knows how the drones operate. How do you control them? How do you regulate them? The next point which is standing out is that the utilization of the resources which Russia had. It is all falling in place. You join the dots because they had initially thought of very short and absolutely precise objective to change the regime, change the leadership or neutralize the leadership. They had not applied themselves towards the utilization of the complete military might. Russia is supposed to be the second largest. Now China has come in, of course, the second largest military force in the entire world. After it was a superpower, it might have actually declined in power and resources, but it has got the military might. It was never planned to apply all this across the distance of 1100 kilometers east-west and 600 kilometers north-south. 150,000 is, like you very rightly said, Sandeep, it is peanuts on the ground. The next point which is standing out is that the application, you see, they had reorganized themselves on the Chinese style. It is called as combat armored brigades. Now, this composite armored brigades, which China has, it is something close to a division, but not of the size of a division. It is of a reduced size. It has got armor component, it has got artillery, it has got cyber, it has got electromagnetic section, all these kinds of things. And it's a very composite, lethal force, lean and thin. But this has again found unsuccessful on ground. Russia today is going back to the old system of divisions which Indian Army has. This is a very important lesson that we have learned. People are not talking because they have not understood. The point which General brought out, that armor aap bhej rahe ho, infantry nahi hai, how can armor ever operate successfully and effectively without infantry being an integral part of the component? So they are coming back to the same system which we have been practicing. Or the
General sir, I'd just like to bring in a very interesting aside here to further nurture, buttress what you said. The Germans in World War II, which I keep falling back on, they had mastered this formation. The Panzer Division, the armored division, had one armored regiment, about 160 tanks, 2 battalions, 80 each, and they had 2 infantry regiments.
Yeah.
Later on, it came down to 1. So you look at the balance of forces. All other forces, artillery, anti-tank, whatever technology was available at that time. Look at the balance between armor and infantry. It was 2:1. You know. So what General Haque was saying, the paucity of infantry we have seen in subcontinent. When Pakistan wanted to do a blitzkrieg at Khemkar and Asal Uttar, okay, going for Bias bridges, and having cut off 11 corps, which means, all Indian forces, 1 corps, 15 corps, are cut off from the mainland, then Pakistan would have had a free run to Delhi. Why did they fail? At that time, experimenting with these Western concepts, Pakistani army had come down to 7 infantry battalions per division instead of the standard 9. Yeah, that time, 65 war.
Absolutely.
And,
right.
Yeah. So the paucity of infantry, of bayonets on the ground, and the one armored division, they did not strike with mass and momentum. They sent regiments piecemeal, and the armored car component, the APC-borne infantry, again infantry, they were not effective. Once there were air bursts and there was faced artillery, they deserted. They jumped down from their vehicles, ran back, shooting at their own rear echelon. We have seen that, sir, in the Ukraine war. The Russian contractual soldiers, we call them vodka veers, like our Agni veers, jokingly. Their infantry, and even the armored infantry, they did not perform like let's say the German armored infantry, the Panzergrenadiers of World War II. Just a doctrine is not successful without implementation. The level of training and morale. I will let General Haque, you have seen subcontinental armies. You have studied war. What is your opinion of the morale and training of the Russian contractual soldiers, sir? What role did that play?
Right. Thank you. Before I would like to add one point. If you remember during brass track when Sundar Jee was chief, sir. At that time his doctrinal, as I was also talking once to Mr. Mukherjee, that possibly to me, one of the most exciting period Indian Army had was General Sundar Jee. He actually made a doctrinal changes, and one of the thing is that the way the fast moving battle and supported by by the other elements with helicopters and air. This whatever the lessons we learned so far, 71 or 65. General Sundar Jee had a very good, and objective was also very in a one point. So I'll not say that subcontinent have learned good lessons, like General Sundar Jee is one of the example during the brass track what he has said. Now let's come to the Russian one. One of the things about, yes, Russia has got a big problem as the demography is a big problem. And I remember when I visited Russia, there's one of the, there is a more women than men. And this ratio, whatever this thing happened, of course, Second World War was one of the culprits. Then over the years, the Russians, they're so-called there during the communism. This This manpower deficiency is huge. So whatever they go, at times they had to compromise in recruiting these manpower. There you will find that the education level and various other things are a little bit compromised. The mobilization which they did a couple of months back, Russians, in fact, this mobilization is not a general mobilization. There they are bringing back those soldiers who are trained technically and a little bit senior, and they are, I mean, that is the actually shortage there, which is NCO level and JSU's level commanding. The command level is a very deficient. The initiative level, because of poor recruits, so initiative which lies in the lower level of the command, this is missing in Russia. Yes, but it doesn't mean that all the formations are like that. Yes, there are certain formations like their tank guards. Guards are really very highly trained, and I must say I myself have seen their exercises and really impressive. But one of the major as they could not beef up the in 2014, 2010, at that time Russia had only less than 100 BTG. Mr. Putin, he planned to bring it to 160 BTGs, but as far as my information, last information, Russia could not meet this deadline, 160 BTGs, because of the paucity of what is it called, troops. This is one of the reasons you will find they have compromised some of the education level, intake level. They have compromised. Number one. Number two, there are certain like Chechens have got a big role. Other Caucasian Caucasus troops like Dagestan and other places where poverty is huge, but they have got a very fierce fighters. You'll find lot of Tatars, then of course Chechens are there, Dagestan, and these are the recruits are there. And one of the, though their recruits are there, like Tatars, I'll say, they really hate Russians. So there's a problem of, mashing also. This is a problem of it was there, it is there. But I'll not say that overall the lesson which at that time I could not finish, that lack of air cover, at General Sudhakar has already said. Also, we in the South Asia, in fact, all of the world, what they do, whenever you go for a fast-moving battle, we are supposed to secure our LOC, which Russian didn't do it. I don't know why. I mean, it really puzzled me. Still today, I'm really puzzled why they didn't use their Air Force. And this Air Force, they had got a certain frontline Air Force planes they could not utilize. Rather, they didn't utilize till August. I don't know. It's a very mysterious why they, even the tanks which they have got, only T-90M they have introduced, not even many in numbers. So whatever we are seeing, the tanks are either T-72M or S, or our modernized versions, or T-80U or UK, or some kind of these tanks. But other things now, as you have seen, that end of this month, end of January, we are going to see that mobilization which started, it is going to finish end of this month. And this is the time we are expecting a real offensive. We are expecting, maybe from the Belarus side or from the Kharkiv side. These are the things. But so far, the indication says that they have already mobilized and they have well trained, and they have also introducing modern and advanced weapons in this offensive, which people are saying that they are going to launch after maybe in the month of February or end of this month. So this is I'll not say that the quality of soldiering of the Russians are not that bad. Yes, there is a certain, every Dick and Harrys are there sometimes. We have also bad soldiers. Everybody has got a bad soldier.
So before going to General Sudhakar Jee, I'd just like to add here, You see, it's not about bad soldiers. It's about motivation, how you see your future. You see, a soldier is going out to die. He has to have a vision about his future after something happens to him, and what motivates him. What will motivate a man to go and stand there and die? And they were not fighting on Russian soil. Mother Russia, the huge motivator of World War II and I and Napoleonic Wars. There was no Mother Russia there. They were fighting on foreign soil. This generation, they didn't know. They were all born after the Soviet Union had collapsed, etc. But before that, see, before coming to this very messy part of using private militias to make up for numbers. That's where I would like Sudhakar Jee to come in about the geopolitical risks, the strategic risks of that happening in terms of military discipline and all. I'd just like to bring readers up to date with this. That you see, what General Haque is saying about the timing, this is again middle of January, and the countryside is snow-laden. And military operations, armored operations that happened in the past. It happened in World War II in high winter. In December, 5th December, the Russians counterattacked in front of Moscow. They came for 100 odd miles. They were stopped at the Oka River line. Again, after Stalingrad, when the German armies were completely destroyed in front of the Stalingrad front, the Russians couldn't really take full advantage of that. There are issues with mobility, in off-road mobility in the countryside. The terrain friction is high. There are other issues with heavy weapon systems, how they behave in extreme cold. Like we have seen during Indian mobilization in 2020 December, winter 20 and 21 in Ladakh, Eastern Ladakh. We have studied that, Sudhakar Jee, those issues of the impact on material and man. And after that will come the mud season again. And General Haque, the mobilization with Russia went for, there were two levels of mobilization. One was the experienced people. They were the first line reserves, like you said, the NCO material, slightly senior. They are not meant to be sent to Ukraine. They are meant as replacements for other Russian units in other sectors, which they cannot deplete because the global situation one never knows. The world is becoming a dangerous place. You cannot take it for granted. So Russia didn't want to denude experienced troops from other sectors without being able to replenish them. The plan is to send those people who are already in the regular army, deployed elsewhere, and send them to Ukraine. And these first-line reservists would go to replenish their numbers. And these 300,000 people which they have mobilized after they have recruited, they're all fresh guys after September. Now, this is a debate we're having in India. How long does it take to train and field responsibly and effectively new soldiers from scratch? 6 months? Not less than 6 months, I'm sure now. We have seen in the World War II, the emergency commissions and all that, they used to call them 6-week wonders. The American troops, in 6 weeks, they were trained and sent. But that would be a grievous mistake on Russia's part. I'm sure they don't want to make that mistake. They want to properly train them. They want to properly induct them, not just train them, induct them into the army, then send them. I will bet on 1st May. Operation Bagration 2 on 1st May, sir. But General Sudhakar Jee, now it's your turn. I have laid out the field for you now.
Okay. Good points. I must compliment the General as also you for having given a very good primer on the canvas. Now I can actually run my brush and paint the painting. Okay, let me just highlight a few issues before I come to the main point, how it is going to unfold after this. So what? You see, till August 2022, Ukraine was taking the attrition on its resources. And let me also share now for the viewers information that in addition to the armed forces of Ukraine, Ukraine always had a resource called as militia or the mercenaries. The strength was approximately 1,34,000 to begin with. So 2,50,000 regular forces plus the mercenary of 1,34,000. Now you have brought up another issue, that Russia. Now this is actually, it is turning out to a huge contagious kind of a disease all over the world. The geopolitics of the world order today is getting impacted with the expansion and the spreading of the concept of the militia forces. Informal, unofficial militial forces are being factored into a combat resource of a country going in for the conflict. Russia also has got the similar kind of forces. I'm coming to the main issues. What happened after August? Till August, Ukraine took the beating. They gave back nice and properly to Russia, but they were not as aggressive and offensive as they are now. The counter-offensive has begun now. In the month of August and September, or say till August, Ukraine was using handheld combat equipments, Javelin, these kind of things, surface to air kind of missile system, launch pads. But
man pads, sir.
Yeah. After that, what happened was that in the month of August and September, they started receiving the extended range, long range weapon systems to include HIMARS, M777. Then they started having all kinds of aerial platform for better surveillance, etc. This is one thing which is standing out very clearly. Since the beginning of September, you would have realized that the counter-offensive from Ukraine has actually picked up momentum. That has to be taken note of. Now, a thing has come is as to why. Why didn't Russia, or why wasn't Russia successful against the Ukraine despite combat superiority, determination, resolve, being a superpower, erstwhile superpower? You see, it is criminal for any stakeholder in a conflict to underestimate the adversary. The biggest blunder which Putin has done is actually has underestimated the spirit of nationalism. He thought that Ukraine is going to crumble in no time. But the Ukrainians, they have held ground, they have stood together, and they have shown the utmost determination and spirit of, I would say, nationalism. This nationalism spirit was never experienced earlier, even during Second World War time, or after that during Cold War period. So this particular factor of binding people together after the women and children have been sent out of Ukraine is actually, I think it has come as a surprise to Russia. And next point, I wish to highlight what is the current situation now. He has gone in to integrate Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson sometime a couple of months back, and has made it a part. He has also held a referendum, whether it is fabricated or real, that is regardless, but he is trying to legalize the whole thing or formalize the issue. Now, after having done it, the question which is coming up, that the partial mobilization which was done for 3 lakh people out of 3,80,000 were initially trained, Sandeep has clarified that is the right thing. They have gone in to replace the trained soldiers. Trained soldiers have come to the front line now. Even then, we need to underscore one important issue, and that issue is Russian armed forces is based on the concept of conscript. Conscript is 3 years training. Why am I highlighting this is we have just introduced something close to what Russians are practicing, Agnivir. Will Agnivir be successful in a subcontinental kind of a conflict situation that we are going through? Is 6 months or 7 months of training good enough for a soldier to give him the staying power to face the real combat? Or you require something more? So the closest parallel that comes to my mind is in 65 and 71 operation, we had a system of 7-year color service. Anyone who joined, he did not have 3 years or 4 years. We never had a system of conscript system. This is for the first time under a different name. We are trying to introduce that particular system. But I would say more than anything else, with the modern technology and high-end platforms coming in now, there will be a requirement of experience. Experience is directly related to continuity of a senior member who knows how things operate and also who knows how to overcome problems. So therefore, this particular system is relevant to Indian Army. We need to give a rethought to this Agnivir thing in terms of the duration, the tenure. Will it be 3 years, which will be good enough? Or it should be increased to something like 5 years or 7 years.
Sir, but what I would like General Haque to clarify is the impact of this private militia. See, he has, being a Bangladeshi general, he knows that the Mukti Fauj, the glorious Mukti Fauj, a body of armed men after independence, having such a huge body of armed men and irregulars, with access to weapons. What it did to Bangladesh society for the next 20 years, irrespective of political affiliations and whatever else happened, what it did to society, the access to arms training of a huge body of irregular people. Now today, Russia, see, Ukraine had their backs to the wall and they used all kinds of dubious people, ex-convicts, and they gave reprieve to condemned criminals and to fuel the ranks of the irregular militia. Russia is using Wagner. Wagner recruits the scum, the flotsam and jetsam of society from prisons, and they're very effective in cutthroat job, yes. But the Russian regulars are now very, very worried. We have seen the way Wagner people are jostling for political prominence. And after this Soledar episode, where they attain glory, no doubt they attain glory. The way they are hogging the limelight, the owner, a civilian, he comes and gets photographed and videographed in the front lines, and what do you think, sir, since you know this from the subcontinental perspective, what happened with militarization of society after Ayub in Pakistan? What happened after the liberation war in Bangladesh with the availability of so much of arms and trained men? What do you think is going to happen to Eastern Europe, sir? Whatever the outcome of this battle.
Right. I just love little bit clarify one thing. Russian Wagner plus or American Blackwaters. These are the similar kind. One of the major aspects is that these guys, those who are there, and especially in decision making, they are highly trained soldiers. I mean, they have retired, then they have again come back. But they are not the soldiers as it is. They have recruited as a militia. But these guys are, I mean, I've seen in Libya they are damn good, these Wagners. And in Libya, in Chad, Mali, this whole belt Wagners are
you have seen them.
Controlling.
You have seen them there, sir.
Yeah,
you have seen them. Okay.
Mali and Libya, and of course, and they're highly but trained soldiers. It's exactly like Blackwater, the American Blackwater. Yes. Now what problem? If it is a controlled way, I mean, let's say Wagner or Blackwater, those who are there, they have got a certain package after mission. They are given that package and they go with that. But unfortunately, if they die, there actually all the problem comes in. If they die, nobody accepts them. Number one, number two. But the man who employs them, they give him a big package. What is it called? Financial incentive to their families, and I mean, forgotten everything. But about this, the one you related with the Bangladeshi one. Bangladeshi one was actually our Mukti Bahinis were not trained soldiers, or rather they are completely raw students, and I mean students, university, I mean the peasants, and if they came and they were trained and they have given weapons. Now, yes, this is where it is coming. I mean, all over the world, wherever such kind of struggle was there, post-struggle was the biggest problem. I mean, the giving back the weapons, or rather, going for domination or political power. I mean, it was there, and Mr. Mukherjee, better that also that we suffered a lot till 70s. I mean, we had really bad time, especially this lawlessness, all those things. Similar thing is also happening in what is that called, in Libya. In Libya, there is a Libyan militias. They have got aircrafts. They have got tanks. They have got more tanks than Bangladesh. They had more weapons. I mean, they have got more aircraft than the Bangladesh at one time. So this is what happens actually. Libyan case. Everybody is a warlord, and everybody is a president, and everybody is I mean, he has got a small fiefdom from where he, makes money, and everybody has got a oil field. So yes, Libya, Syria, then these kind places where such thing happened, where political control or strong leadership failed to emerge. There actually it happened. But in our case, we had also the same problem for, let's say, at least I'll say 10 years plus. But one thing what we did at one time that especially the Rohingya Bahinis were absorbed in military. That was a very wise decision. That absorption was with the army was a wise decision because this is a big force. Rohingya Bahini was a very big force and they're trained and well motivated. They also, when they joined the army, they contributed. But Wagner, what I see, the way it is now being operated in Africa, especially, yes, the boss, he's a billionaire, that who is owner of that Wagner. He's the Mr. Putin's one of the right hands. Money is not a problem, but I mean, to speak to, especially I'll say that about Libya, I haven't heard any bad disciplinary, what is that called, actions or raping or killing, all those things I haven't seen or I've heard while I was there. Same thing with Chad, same thing happened in Mali. But unfortunately, we could see in other aspects, the militias, they were, they were human smugglers. But they are under Wagner's were so far what I saw in Africa, their control.
So it's a relief, sir. It's a good to know. It's a relief that the Wagner has a good command and control system, which has societal securities also. So that's good to know. So now,
what we should be worried about is that proliferation of the weapons from the Ukraine. I've seen with my own eyes, javelins are sold on the internet. Javelins are sold on internet. I forgot the price, around some $1,000, and all are originated from. This is the thing now. Europeans are now, losing their sleep over it. They have got javelins. They have got most of the weapons. And Jan Sudhakar, sir, you will know that at one time, all the guns have got certain life. We calculate that, okay, this gun can fire 100 rounds over the 1 month. But Ukrainians have fired 100 rounds within 1 week and the gun melted. I'm talking about M777. This is such a high quality gun. It melted. So these are the challenges. Yes, this is what I find is as I was saying that I myself have seen in internet that javelin is being sold in the black market, and a lot of reports are there that this has come to Syria and in the Middle Eastern countries. They have bought this one. This is the actually worry.
Sir, I have seen how-to trainings on YouTube, how to use a manpad, how to bring an aircraft down. So that is going to be dangerous for Europe going ahead.
True.
Yeah. So, General Sudhakar Jee, if we have to wrap up this discussion, what do you see happening in 2023 in Ukraine, sir? This has a profound impact not just on Europe, on the world. I mean, trade, commerce, logistics, movement, prices, everything is as if in a suspended animation now. Okay, this is a war. If this becomes a way of life and goes ahead, there's no sign the way these two people are, positioned, the stances they have taken, Mr. Zelensky and Mr. Putin, there's no sign of any negotiated settlement. It can't happen. Their terms such as it can't happen. There has to be a military outcome. What do you see happening militarily, sir, in 2023?
Well, Sandeep, very good question. Firstly, the counter-offensive by Ukraine had picked up momentum. However, that counter-offensive has been effectively, I would say, going by what has happened in past 48 to 96 hours from Russia's side, like the general very nicely brought out. Russia has been by and by preparing to revive its offensive or attack against Ukraine with full might, which may start sometime by mid-February, maybe towards end of February, sometime. Now, this offensive, goes ahead. Then I have three scenarios coming to my mind, scenario building, okay? First scenario is that Russia goes ahead, or let's say Ukraine, since they're winning the war, let's give them the due. They have actually stood together. Let's say the counter-offensive of Ukraine goes ahead to whatever they wish to achieve. What is it that they want to achieve? As per my research and my analysis, they have got only one objective to achieve: push back the Russians from wherever they are as much as possible. But the primary target which Ukrainians are looking for is to take Crimea back. In order to take Crimea back, they have some shoulders. Like, for example, Kherson is towards one side. You have Mariupol towards another side. These are the flanks of the land bridge. Okay, then you have, what is the name, that central location? Maritopol or some place. It's centrally located. It's such a kind of a place. It gives opening to Kherson, gives opening towards Luhansk, gives opening to Mariupol, centrally located. So such like places Ukraine would like to take over and somehow or the other build up its momentum to retake Crimea back. Now, if that happens, neither Russia can afford to lose Crimea, nor Ukraine has got the capability to take Crimea. Then there is a fear. Then the geopolitics comes in. Very short, 2 lines, I would say, that the global order is changing. So what is it changing for? When I say global order is changing, prior to First and Second World War, we had polycentric world, multipolarity. More the multipolarity, more the chances of conflict. People kept on changing sides, alignment, realignment. Like, for example, Germany and Russia, they had signed an agreement of no conflict. But soon after having signed, the Germany started invading. America was sitting quiet, was a neutral party. Certainly it joined in under Allied, the outcome of the Allied forces tilted. Similarly, you have Italy. Italy was initially with the Axis. But after Mussolini was hanged, they changed, they switched over sides.
No. Before he was hanged, once he was deposed.
They switched their sides to join the Allied, and that is how things change very fast. So what I'm coming to is that in the present day scenario, there is a huge amount of polarization which is in progress. It will be incorrect on our part to say there is a unipolar world. No, let's accept the fact that America is a declining power, but not so declined that it can be overtaken by China overnight. No, it will take a lot of time, 20, 40, 50 years maybe, but it's a declining power. And there are new poles which are emerging. Russia has been weakened by virtue of this ongoing conflict, but it is still a pole. China is still a pole. India is emerging as a pole in this polycentric world, multipolarity. What I'm coming to is this multipolar world today is characterized by the nuclear weapon systems. The nuclear weapons were not there in the First and Second World War. So when you have in the backdrop of nuclear weapon system, when you have people changing sides, alignment, realignment, etc., there is a grave danger of Third World War breaking out while both the parties are trying to take or defend the Crimea. That is what my one assessment is. Second point is, if Russia starts off its offensive by mid-February or so and pushes back the Ukrainian forces wherever they are, Kherson or Kharkiv or say Luhansk or Donetsk, these 4 provinces I'm talking of, the basic aim of Russia, to my understanding and my research, is to keep the land bridge connected and secure. Secure the shoulders of the land bridge onto either side, the eastern side, Mariupol side, as also to Kherson side. So in order to do that, they have to actually push back the Ukrainians, which will witness very intense form of combat and conflict in next couple of months' time. Now, if that happens, well, then it is going to be a conflict between the Western powers and that of Russia. This also has got the danger of leading us to a kind of a situation wherein there could be another conflagration or flaring up of the offensive on both sides. Third and most important point is, if some wisdom, some balanced thought process initiated by G20 presidency or by Narendra Modi and our Minister of External Affairs, some kind of initiative is undertaken by these people. Something is going on, I know for sure, in track 2. If some sense prevails, then there may be a stalemate. Whoever is wherever, let's freeze. Let's have that concept of line of control, the way it was applied for Pakistan and India. Wherever it is, you please freeze all activities, bring in UN forces, and for God's sake, for the sake of mankind, stop this mindless conflict. It is hurting. The same Russians will be with the begging ball very soon. They have oil, they have gas, they have got mineral, everything. But the economy is being forced to face such challenges that it will be very difficult for the posterity, for the future generation. If you think about the future generation, then perhaps a stalemate is desirable. If the stalemate takes place, my recommendation through your channel to our viewers is that lot of effort had gone in 2014 and 15. Minsk Accord had been signed. Okay, it was under the leadership of Germany and France. These are the two leaders, and they have another organization, OSCE. Okay, so these are the three important organizations. And as per that, there are certain actions which need to be done. There is supposed to be some constitutional amendment, supposed to be the rebel or the militia which is operating, carrying out hybrid operation. They have to give up the arms, they have to surrender, then they have to vacate this Luhansk and Donetsk, and then that Russian language, whatever constitutional amendments are to be carried out so as to give some autonomy to these states, Luhansk and Donetsk particularly, that has to be done. But they had gone ahead to a kind of a milestone which otherwise one has to work for years. Now so much has been done. Let's invest our time and energy on the Minsk Accord and a stalemate be reached. Let peace be given a chance so that the whole world order, which is actually in a turmoil now, gets back to some kind of stability. Otherwise, we are heading for very serious trouble of nuclear war, as far as my thought process and research is concerned. Back to you, please.
So I would, you had General Sudhakar Jee had started the discussion. It will be only in the fitness of things if General Haque ends it. Before that, I would like to lay out a proposition for General Haque. I would request him to respond to that when he's wrapping up today's session. I am saying that a political process and a military process, they are on the same linear scale at various points. After all, war is politics by other means. The incentive, the impetus for a political solution comes when there is a particular kind of military stalemate, or there is overwhelming advantage to one side, and who sees it fit that, okay, I have the advantage and now let's see what I can get on the table. And the other side feels I'm losing everything, so I might as well go to the table. You see, Russia, after having lost and done what it has, Putin's regime, I don't think can afford to withdraw from Ukraine. Forget Crimea, even from LPR, TPR. Give them up. You cannot go back to Minsk now. The paste is out of the tube. That you cannot push toothpaste back in the tube. Ukraine, after whatever sacrifices they have had, no government, forget Zelensky, will survive if they sell up peace. They have talked it up so much. Forget Crimea, even Luhansk and the LPR, DPR, this part, without substantial concessions. So that's a impasse there. Now, if you look at the military outcomes, sir, I would very humbly like to give my proposition as a military historian who studied these things a bit, particularly in that geography. Russia or Soviet Union had talked a lot about battle of maneuver, annihilative victories through maneuver in the post-World War II, Cold War time. And they had an enormous armored force and everyone was scared of that. And the fear was that they would come across the rivers, all the river barriers in Europe, and they will come to the Channel coast. That has not been tested. In military history, Russians have always gained through slow grinding wars, grinding campaigns, because they have territory and manpower to trade. Enormous strategic depth. They have never, that's what I feel, mastered the art of this maneuver warfare and got away with it. Even World War II, their victories were through sheer numbers and this grinding, the attrition which wore the Germans down. I just like to bring this statistics for the benefit of viewers. At the threshold of victory in World War II in 1945, in the last 4 months, ever since January 12th, their offensive started, the final offensive, and May 8th, when there was World War II ended, they lost 6,000 tanks. They lost 6,000 tanks, facing an enemy which was crumbling. Germany was at its last legs. In the Battle of Berlin alone, 2 weeks, they lost almost 2,000 tanks, 81,000 KIA, 3+ lakhs of total casualties at the threshold and inside Berlin, facing what? Irregular troops. Only about, inside Berlin, there were about 45,000 Wehrmacht, German regular army, and then the rest were Volkssturm and Hitlerjugend. They were facing bicycle units of kids, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, carrying those very simple Panzerfaust, anti-tank bazookas, and they lost 2,000 tanks. Russia can take the beating they have shown, and that's how they prevailed. There was no glorious battle of maneuvers, etc. After they were foiled in March, all those blitzkrieg kind of offensives were foiled at the threshold of Kyiv. They went back to grinding wars in the south of Ukraine, and they were successful. Mariupol, the way they took Mariupol, and they almost wrapped it up, DPR, LPR, before the Ukrainian counteroffensive came in Kharkov and then towards the south in Kherson. My proposition, sir, is that Russia has to do something of World War II scale, huge counteroffensive with huge numbers coming summer, to bring Zelensky to his knees, and then there would be no other option for him but to get a face-saving deal brokered by other countries, with West leaning more and more on economic pressures, etc. Would you support this, sir, what I've said? If not, please then give us your wisdom and end it your way, this discussion.
Right. In fact, my view is also not different from your one and General Sudhakar. I'll also think that Russia, what it is going to do is that it will maintain the land bridge which is established on the south, especially safeguarding the Black Sea, and because it's a very strategic location. Russia will never, give control this particular sea to anybody else. This is the reason they have captured this one. They've also captured Abkhazia in Georgia, just to keep safe this region. What I can see that possibly, the counteroffensive they were launching, they'll settle possibly the front line. They'll settle around the river in the south, which starts from the Russian border till Kherson. This river, they'll settle their front line in this river, and this is a defendable area. Number two, the aim of Russian, what they wanted to save the Russian-speaking population of these areas, and in fact, this is also he has achieved. Yes, now we see we have to see that how far Russia goes for counteroffensive. But as far as I also agree with that one, that yes, there going to be a kinds of negotiation. The way Zelensky tried in the month of April till Boris Johnson came in and he said that Ladakh lenge type rhetoric, and at the expense of poor Ukrainians. So in fact, if you have seen for the last couple of months, Europe is really feeling the pinch of this war. West has already pumped $100 billion in Ukraine, with the understanding they are going to bleed the Russian military, and they are going to weaken the Russian economy. But we are not seeing it economy-wise. I don't see, rather about the reports which is coming. We don't see that it is a weakened Russian economy, number one. Number two, the Russian forces are also not weakened yet. And another thing which West tried, of course, at the expense of poor Ukrainian, that they wanted to defeat Russia so that, this alliance of China and Ukraine, China and Russia is broken. I mean, this is one of the strategy they try to play, that if Russia is weakened, so it's easier to deal with China. But it's not also going to happen. So now I have to see how far this counteroffensive goes. This is one thing, and also that land bridge will be maintained. But I've got a what is it called, proposition, rather I've got a suggestion that, you know, India being the what is it called, leader of the G20, and people both sides, both Russians, Americans, Chinese, everybody listens to India. And India can play a very important role, you know. Now at this moment, what is happening? Americans are not talking to Russians, Russians are not talking to Americans, our Russians are not talking to Europeans, Europeans are not talking to Russians. But India, everybody is talking to India. India can play an important role in this area for a peaceful and negotiated ceasefire. This I don't know how, though I've seen Mr. Jayashankar's statement for the last couple of months or weeks rather. He seems to be not giving this attention. You know, this is a leadership position India has got. It can really make things, because everybody is listening to India. So I hope India takes this initiative for a negotiation between these two groups, and also there can be some kind of what is it called, peaceful and honorable exit from both the party. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, thank you enormously. You know, Sandivas, would forever be grateful to you. What you have done today is remarkable. You know, in the world arena, two South Asian generals have spoken without fear or favor. They don't have any political affiliations or no extra grind on this. And they have brought out in front of our viewers and for anyone who cares to listen, where exactly Russia and Ukraine stands in this war, what made it happen, what can happen tomorrow, where does the world stand, and how it can be brought to a conclusion. Of course, even after that, there are always the imponderables which we won't be able to figure out, no matter what we do in a television, in a video discussion. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you once more from Sandy Wars, and have a good evening, please.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee. Thank you, General Sudhakar. Thank you very much.
A lot of things to learn. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
I have benefited of it.
Goodbye.